Welcome back to Simple Pilot Solutions. Today, I want to cover the aerodynamics behind slow flight and why it is important for us as pilots to know how to handle it. Slow flight occurs when the plane is flying just above stall speed, or, for private pilot standards, it is when we are flying just above the stall indicator. This will give us a high angle of attack, producing a high amount of lift, with the byproduct of having high drag on the plane and slow airspeed. This also means we have a small margin before we get into our aerodynamic stall. First, let's look into the lift equation to start to understand why flying in slow flight is different. Now this is a confusing equation, so I'm not going to explain it all. The 2 points I want you to memorize is the C sub L and the V squared. The C sub L is our coefficient of lift. This can be either the shape, the camber, or the angle of attack. For our purposes, we're going to focus on the angle of attack, and we're just going to know that if we have a higher angle of attack, we produce more lift, and a lower angle of attack, we have less lift. And then the V squared is just our velocity, or our true airspeed, squared. This just means if we go faster, the wing naturally produces more lift, and if we go slower, it naturally produces less lift. And if that doesn't make sense, then I just want you to remember that if we are flying faster, we need a lower angle of attack in order to maintain altitude. And if we are flying slower, we must have a higher angle of attack to maintain the same altitude. And this is all caused by the type and amount of drag acting on the aircraft. When we are at low airspeeds, we will have a lot of induced drag, which is created by the production of lift. This means we will always have some induced drag while flying, but at lower airspeeds we're going to have a lot more induced drag because we need a higher angle of attack, which is producing stronger wingtip vortices and downwash. All this means is that the plane becomes less aerodynamically efficient and requires more thrust to maintain altitude at lower airspeeds. This leads to one of the defining characteristics of slow flight, learning to fly on the backside of the power curve, otherwise known as the region of reverse command. In this area, the slower we fly, the more thrust is required to maintain altitude. This is caused because when we fly slower, we need to increase our angle of attack, which causes an increase in induced drag. Flight gets a little confusing to go faster, which goes against everything we are initially taught. The reason for this is all about our angle of attack and induced drag. When we reduce our angle of attack, it will cause the plane to increase speed because we don't have as much induced drag. But a side effect of this is that the extra airspeed will actually start making us climb, so we need less power if we want to maintain altitude. You can feel this effect when you are exiting the slow flight maneuver and you add full power. From there, you always have to push down on the nose in order to maintain altitude, otherwise the plane starts climbing on you. In slow flight, the relationship between pitch, power, altitude, and airspeed changes. Now we will primarily use pitch for airspeed and power for altitude. If we increase pitch without changing our power setting, it will cause us to have a higher angle of attack, meaning we have more induced drag and we will start losing airspeed. All of that combined means we need to have more power to overcome the increased drag and maintain altitude, so if we don't add that power, it will cause us to start descending. We will also notice that at slower airspeeds, the effectiveness of our controls will be reduced. This is because when we are flying slower, there is less air flowing over the control surfaces, meaning less air for the control surfaces to push against and affect the airplane. This will result in a slower roll response, reduced elevator authority, and a greater reliance on our rudder. To counteract this, we have to apply large control inputs to get the same effects as we're used to doing normal cruise flight. But we need to make sure we are still being smooth and deliberate with our control inputs. One of the dangers with slow flight is that we are operating very close to the critical angle of attack. This leaves us with very little margin for error, and if we are uncoordinated or apply excessive back pressure, it can quickly cause us to go into a stall, or if it's bad enough, we might even spin the airplane. I want you to also remember that these aerodynamic principles are not limited to practicing slow flight. They will also apply to every real flight you do. You'll notice that you use them constantly when you're coming into land or when you're taking off. So understanding these principles and understanding how slow flight works will improve both your precision and safety in these critical phases of the flight. The aerodynamics behind slow flight provide a clear view into how lift, drag, and control effectiveness interact near the limits of flight. By understanding these relationships, you can better anticipate aircraft behavior and maintain control when it matters most. Thank you for watching, and let me know if there is anything you're struggling with that I might be able to provide a simple explanation to.